There have been times, and they will come again, no doubt, when I could write to you about ordinary things, in a way at least not depressing. But for a good while now, I have felt so tired out bodily and mentally that I couldn't conscientiously ask you to share my mood. The life I live here in the country, and so very much alone, is capable of being the happiest or the unhappiest of existences, as it all depends so on oneself, and is so very little interfered with by outside influences. Perhaps I am more than usually subject to extremes of happiness and of depression, yet I suppose everyone must have moments, even in the most varied and distracting life, when the old questioning spirit, the demon of the why whence whither, stalks in like the skeleton at the feast, and takes a seat beside him. I say everyone, but I must accept those rare and happy souls who really believe in Christianity, who no longer strive after even goodness as it comes from one's own effort, but take refuge in the mysterious sacrifice of Christ, his merit sufficing, and in short throw themselves in the orthodox way on the consoling truth of the atonemento, me hitherto neither comprehensible nor desirable. These people, having completely surrendered self, having lost their lives, as it were, in Christ, must truly have found them, must know the rest that comes from literally casting their care of doubt and strife and thought upon the Lord. I say hitherto the doctrine of the vicarious suffering of Christ has been to me not only incomprehensible, but also unconsoling. I didn't want it, and didn't understand, even intellectually, the feeling of people who do. I don't mean to say that the life and death of Christ and the example they set for us have not been to me always the brightest spot in history. They have, but they have stood rather as an example that we must try to follow, that we must by constant and ceaseless effort bring our lives nearer. But always to some extent, at least through ourselves, that is, through ourselves with God's help, got by asking Him for it, and by His giving it to us straight, and with no mediation. When I have seen as time went by my own shortcomings, all the more, instead of the less frequent, I have thought, well, you don't try hard enough, you are not really in earnest in thinking that you believe in the Christian life as the only true one. The more I tried, nevertheless, the less it seemed like the model life. The best things I did continued to be the more spontaneous ones, the greatest efforts had the least success, until finally I couldn't but see that if this was Christianity, it was not the rest that Christ had promised his disciples. It was nothing more than a pagan life with a high ideal, only an ideal so high that nothing but failure and unhappiness came from trying to follow it. And one night, when I was awake through all the hours, it occurred to me, what if this were the need that Christianity came to fill up in our hearts? What if, after all that old meaningless form of words that had been sounded in my unheeding ears, all my days were suddenly to become invested with spirit and truth? What if this were the good tidings that have made so many hearts secure and happy in the most trying situations? For if morality and virtue were the test of a Christian, certainly Christ would never have likened the kingdom of heaven to a little child in whose heart is no struggle, no conscious battle between right and wrong, but only unthinking love and trust. However it may turn out, whether it shall seem true or untrue to me finally, I am at least glad to be able to put myself intellectually into the place of the long line of Christians who have felt the need, and the comfort of this belief. It throws a light upon Uncle Henry's talk, which has seemed to me hitherto neither reasonable nor consoling. When I was with him, it so far disgusted me that I fear I showed him plainly that I found it not only highly unpractical but ignoble and shirking. I knew all the while that he disliked what he called my pride and conceit, but felt all the same that his views didn't touch my case, a bit, didn't give me the least comfort or practical help, and seemed to me wanting in earnestness and strength. Now I say to myself, what if the good gentleman had all along really got hold of the higher truth, the purer spirituality? Verily, there are two sides to everything in this world, and one becomes more charitable the older one grows. However, if I write at this length, it is because I am feeling today too seedy for anything else. I had a hemorrhage a week ago, which rather took the life out of me. But as it was the only one I feel, I should by this time be coming round again, and probably might if I hadn't got into a sleepless state, which completely knocks me up. The old consolatory remark, patience, neighbor, and shuffle the cards ought to impart a little hope to me, I suppose. But it's a long time since I've had any trumps in my hand, and you know that with the best luck the game always tired me. Willie James sometimes tells me to behave like a man and a gentleman. If I wish to outwit fate, what a real person he is to me, in nearly all respects a head and shoulders above other people. How is Wendell Holmes? Ellie is having the gayest winter in Washington, and wants me to go to them there, which I had meant to do before the return of my last winter's illness. But it's not for me now. Later I have kept my letter a day or two, thinking I might feel in tune for writing you a better one, and not sending this at all. But alas, I shall have to wait some time before I am like my old self again, so I may as well let this go. You see, I am not in a condition mentally or physically to take bright and healthy views of life. But if you really care, you may as well see this mood as another for heaven only knows when I shall get out of it. Can you understand the utter weariness of thinking about one thing all the time so that, when you wake up in the morning, consciousness comes back with a sigh of, oh yes, here it is again. Another day of doubting and worrying, hoping and fearing has begun. If I don't get any sleep at all, which is too frequently the case, the strain is a little bit too hard, and I am sometimes tempted to take a drop of pissin to put me to sleep in earnest. That momentary vision of redemption from thinking and striving of a happy rest, this side of eternity, has vanished away again. I can't help it, peaceful, desirable as it may be. The truth is that practically I don't believe it. It was such a sudden thing, such an entire change from anything that had ever come to me before, that it seemed almost like an inspiration. And I waited, almost expecting it to continue to be permanent. But it doesn't stay, and so back swings the universe to the old place, paganism, naturalism, or whatever you call the belief whose watchword is God and our own soul. And who shall say there is not comfort in it? One at least feels that here one breathes one's native air, welcoming back the old human feeling with its beautiful pride, and its striving, its despair, its mystery, and its faith. Right to me, and tell me whether as one goes on one must still be tossed about more and more by these conflicting feelings, or whether they finally settle themselves quietly one way or the other, and take only their proper share at least of one's life. This day is like summer, but I should enjoy it more if last night hadn't been quite the most unpleasant I ever spent. I got so thoroughly tired about 2 in the morning that I made up my mind in despair to give the morphine another trial. And as one dose had no effect, took two, the consequence of which is that I feel as ill today as one could desire. I can tell you, sir, you had better prize the gift of sleep as it deserves. While you have it, if I don't never write to you no more, y'all know it's because I really wish to treat you kindly. But one of these days, y'all get another kind of letter, brimful perhaps with health and happiness. And thoroughly ashamed of my present self, I had a long letter yesterday from Harry James at Florence, Italy. But homesick. Did you see those verses in the North American, translated from the Persian goodbye? The last of all is full both of realities and illusions, the latter insistently living through all the distress of the former. And I should like to say, or to believe, that they remained with her to the end which was near. Don't be alarmed at my pencil. I am not in bed, but only bundled up on the piazza by order of the doctor. I started for New York feeling a good deal knocked up, but hoping to get better from the change. I was to stay there over Sunday and see Dr. Metcalf, who has a high reputation and was a friend of my father's. I left a request at his office that he would come to me on Sunday, P. Roman 1000. But in the meantime, my cousin, Mrs. Minturn Post, with whom I was staying, urged upon me her physician, Dr. Taylor, who came on Saturday night just as I was going to bed, and after sounding my lungs told me very dreadful things about them, as his verdict was worse than Metcalf's proved. I will tell you what he said first. He began very solemnly, "My dear young lady, your right lung is diseased. All your hemorrhages have come from there. It must have been bad for at least a year before they began. You must go to Europe as soon as possible." This was not cheerful, as I had been idiot enough to believe some time ago. Such a different explanation. But of course I wanted to learn what he absolutely thought, and told him I was a bit afraid if there weren't tubercles was I curable. And if there were, was I hopeless? I asked him for the very worst view he had conscientiously to take, but didn't mean definitely to ask how long I should live, and so was rather unprepared for his reply of 2 or 3 years. I didn't, however, wish to make him regret his frankness. So I said, "Well, doctor, even if my right lung were all gone, I should make a stand with my left." And then, by way of showing how valiant the stand would be, fainted away. This, I should say, was owing a good deal to my previous used-up condition from want of sleep. It made him at any rate hasten to assure me that there was every possibility of my case being not after all so bad, with which he took his departure to my great relief, as I didn't think him at all nice. His grammar was bad, and he made himself generally objectionable. The next night dear Dr. Metcalf came, whom I love for the gentlest and kindest soul I have ever seen. To start with, he's a gentleman, as well as an excellent physician, and to end with, he and my father were fond of each other at West Point, and he takes a sort of paternal interest in me. He told me that my right lung is decidedly weaker than my left, which is quite sound, and that the hemorrhage has been a good thing for it, and kept it from actual disease, and also that if I can keep up my general health, I may get all right again. He has known a 10 times worse case get entirely well. He urged me not to go to Washington, but decidedly to go to Europe, so this last is what I am to do with my cousin Mrs. Post. If I am not dead before June in a fortnight, I am to go back to New York to be for some time under Metcalf's care. I feel tired out and hardly able to stir, but my courage is good, and I don't propose to lose it if I can help, for I know it all depends on myself. Whether I get through or not, that is if I begin to be indifferent. To what happens, I shall go down the hill fast. I have fortunately through my mother's father enough Irish blood in me, rather to enjoy a good fight. I feel the greatest longing for summer or spring. I should like it to be always spring for the rest of my life. And to have all the people I care for always with me, but who wouldn't like it so goodbye? To the gallantry and beauty of which there is little surely to add, but there came a moment almost immediately, after when all illusion failed, which it is not good to think of or linger on, and yet not pitiful not to note. One may have wondered rather doubtingly, and I have expressed that what life would have had for her, and how her exquisite faculty of challenge could have worked in with what she was likely otherwise to have encountered, or been confined to. None the less did she, in fact, cling to consciousness. Death, at the last, was dreadful to her. She would have given anything to liven the image of this, which was long to remain with me. Appeared so of the essence of tragedy that I was in the far-off aftertime to seek to lay the ghost, by wrapping it a particular occasion, aiding in the beauty and dignity of art. The figure that was to hover, as the ghost has at any rate been of an extreme pertinence, I feel to my doubtless too loose and confused general picture, vitiated perhaps by the effort to comprehend more than it contains, much as this cherished companion's presence among us had represented for William and Myselfand. It is on his behalf I especially speak. Her death made a mark that must stand here for a too waiting conclusion. We felt it together as the end of our youth.